Hello and welcome back to the show. So I'm really excited to be joined here today by my guest, Josh Payne. So if you guys don't know who Josh is, he is a founder in the AI and tech industry. He's actually currently the founder and CEO of Coframe, which we're going to definitely talk a little bit about today. But Josh is going to be sharing with us today a little bit about his insights on AI and his insights on tech and how it's affecting the industry. Josh, man, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you join us here today and share a little bit about your expertise and insights.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've read a little bit about your background already and kind of some of the things that you've done, and it really sounds like you've done quite a few cool things across the board with your career so far. So, for our audience out there who don't know who you are or who haven't heard of you yet, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background? How did you get started, and overall where you are here today?
Definitely. Yeah, so quick background. I grew up in Texas, like yourself, and didn't really get involved in technology until I went to school. But when I did get exposed to it, it was completely blew my mind. It was something that was just an incredible like unlock for me because I was able to see a lot of peers that I had making things that I didn't think were possible to be made by folks of my age and at the time. And so got incredibly inspired by a bunch of folks that sort of were in my peer group in college, and that sort of set me off on the path of entrepreneurship. Shortly after school, I started a company called AccessBell, which was video technology for telemedicine and telehealth. And this is a company that, we ended up actually selling to a conglomerate called Tata Group, with a really fun journey, kind of first experience in high tech entrepreneurship. After this company, I started another one called Autograph, which we were, basically kind of building these experiences and activations and collectibles and so on for fans to connect them with brands and well-known icons that they were, a fan of. And we scaled that one super, super quickly, grew from zero to over $2 billion in valuation over the course of about 3 years. And yeah, learned a ton from that experience. That was a really, really wild ride. And after that, my background from an academic side is in the AI space. And this is an area that I'm extremely passionate about, just like personally very excited about, and was able to kind of pull in some of the learnings that I've taken along these journeys and combine that with my knowledge of what's possible in AI to start my current company, Coframe. And and at Coframe, what we're doing is helping companies optimize and generally kind of increase the revenue, conversion rate, et cetera, for the websites that they have. So you've got a website, it's driving traffic through, you're getting leads, you're getting sales, you're getting signups, whatever it is that you're aiming for. What we do is we create and run different test variations of that to figure out what variation is going to drive the most revenue or drive the most sales or whatever you're optimizing for. And we do that with AI as a core technology and allows us to do it way faster than humans could on their own, like previously. So, yeah, that's kind of a gist of my background.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I think it's really cool what you're working on right now with CoFrame because there's a lot of a lot of businesses out there that, pretty much I think every business out there has a website of some sort. Some are doing really well with generating traffic and as well as converting them into clients. Some not so much, right? Just kind of out there. Especially what we see in the real estate industry. There's a lot of agents that have websites, but it really doesn't do much for their business. So I would love for you to maybe share a little bit about, just kind of your experience in looking at different websites that are out there and what you're seeing out there as far as which websites do you think are able to generate the most amount of traffic and as well as conversions, and what are you seeing from either customers or just case studies that you've done of websites that are out there but really kind of maybe outdated or aren't doing anything, and how they can actually fix that to make it a useful endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should probably break this down into the two areas that you talked about. The first is driving traffic to the website, and then the second is driving conversions. Because once you have the traffic, then it's about conversions. This funny story actually, I gave a talk at the Amazon offices, Amazon Web Services, and they were hosting a bunch of real estate executives there to try to like figure out the strategy for how they're going to deploy effective websites. And there were a couple of key learnings that I was able to bring to the table from my and the people who are on my team's past experiences. Generally speaking, traffic is costing more and more. And so there are tactics and strategies for driving more traffic to your website. We can talk about, some of the more cutting edge stuff, which is kind of interesting. I can talk about the more traditional stuff. Um, we have a lot more experience on once someone hits the site, making sure that they convert. So conversion is a key to profitable growth. Um, and and so that's kind of another area that we can chat about. To the first area, right? Like how do you get more traffic? I mean, we've seen the SEO game play out over the course of the last 20 years. And there are some kind of well-known tips and tricks, especially in the real estate area. Some of the like larger platforms have certainly done an incredible job of like kind of creating getting their SEO coverage by having just like tons and tons of listings. And so that's kind of one unfair advantage that these larger platforms have as a smaller realtor or real estate agent. It can be difficult to kind of compete with that, but that's why you need to attach yourself to these platforms. And so figuring out which platforms we can kind of connect our brand to is kind of the key thing here. This is something that, funny enough, my dad is actually a real estate agent, and so one of the things that he does is he'll be on all these different sites and make sure that he has his brand kind of attached to that, and then it backlinks to his site and all that stuff. So that's on the normal SEO side. Then we're seeing this really interesting trend in what's called AEO or answer engine optimization. So this is like SEO but for AI. Basically, the question is how we know how to optimize how to get eyeballs from Google. How do we optimize to get eyeballs from ChatGPT and Gemini and all these different AI answer engines? And so the tactics there are actually really similar. Some of the tactics are really similar, but there are additional tactics that are also very effective. So, for instance, having um, your brand mentioned a lot on Reddit. Reddit is actually a top platform for referring traffic over to or being scraped by ChatGPT. So being like, because it's kind of a trusted place. So being active in Reddit communities, real estate in certain areas, that can be a really good strategy. They'll pick that up. When customers go to ChatGPT, they're asking very specific questions. It's not just long tail. It's not just like, sorry, it's not just short terms. It's not like, house, Austin, Texas, cheap. You know, it's more like, hey, I'm living in Austin, or I'm going to be moving to Austin. I have 3 kids and a dog, and I am going to be working in this company, and I'm looking for a house. Like, help me figure out where I should go. And then you have like a conversation back and forth. It'll ask you, okay, well, how important is proximity to the city center to you? And then other questions like that. What types of schools you want to send your kids to? And so you go back and forth. And those long tail questions tend to be more commonly asked in platforms like Reddit and in Quora is another one. And so making sure that your brand shows up in these kind of like question answer platforms is a really powerful way to rank because what we're preliminarily starting to see is that traffic that's coming from ChatGPT, like when someone's gone and done a research session and then it refers to you, that traffic converts at a way higher rate than traffic from Google. What Webflow, which is a big company in our space, had put out a report that they're seeing a 6x increase in conversion from traffic coming from ChatGPT than coming from anywhere else or in aggregate. So that's a pretty shocking stat. And so that's on the like how do you get more eyeballs on your site? And there's obviously lots more strategies that you can do. YouTube is actually a big source of these answer engines as well at this point now. So like putting up video content is super important in the real estate game, right? Like visual content, videos. Also being on TikTok, even though that's not going to get necessarily people to your site, it's a very good channel. And then there's like when someone actually arrives at your site, uh, how do we make sure that they convert? And that's all about testing and optimization, basically conversion optimization, the type of stuff that we do at Coframe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really glad you brought that part up with AEO, right? Search engine optimization, but for AI specifically, because we've seen now, I guess we're in the middle of the shift between SEO, almost kind of moving directly into AEO now, where websites that are, formerly ranking very high on Google, if they're not getting picked up by AI search engines or these AI engines, then it's not necessarily, of benefit. And especially I think moving forward, and maybe you can share a little bit of your take on this, where this is going, and do you think SEO is just going to probably die out sometime in the future? But you mentioned a very important part, which is, if your brand is getting mentioned across certain platforms, then you have a better chance of being recommended for AI search engines. So when you talk about a brand being mentioned, is there anything specific that, maybe a real estate agent or a business owner, they should be thinking about when it comes to getting their brand mentioned? Is it their website domain? Is it just their name, right? What kind of mechanics do you think go into play there when it comes to getting your brand mentioned a certain amount of times on these different platforms?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about these, I mean, backlinks are very important. Having reputable backlinks, that's important both for AEO as well as SEO. So having your domain kind of linked to. Um, but the other thing that's important is to realize is these answer engines are like intelligent, right? It's artificial intelligence. So it's like they have the ability to think more or less like a human when it comes to evaluating the different options out there. And so it's not enough just to have your name mentioned, you have to be mentioned in a very positive context. Like you have to be a trusted name. You have to have reputation. Um, who's mentioning it is important, right? How are they mentioning you? What is being brought up? How well does its relevance to? How relevant is this to the query that was asked? And so what I would generally say is, and authenticity is also something people are trying to really optimize for. That's why Reddit is like a great platform for citations because they do a very good job of filtering out bots on Reddit. The community really self-polices quite well. And so the general rule of thumb is just try to get mentioned in as many high reputation places as possible and authentic places as possible. So if that means you yourself going to Reddit and representing, hey, when you see a question, like just go and answer that question yourself, and engage with the audience, or have a team that helps to do that as well. Or if it means potentially sourcing other reputable sites to, get your name mentioned in the news somehow, like or different awards that go out. I mean, weekly publications and so on, blogs. There's all that kind of stuff, right? So uh, the other cool part about this is that you can kind of use AI to help figure that out. You can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, like this is my brand, this is my situation. Maybe like go and make a search just like a customer would. And what the cool thing about ChatGPT is it cites the different things that it looks at, right? And so if you see what when you do a search, if you see what things it's looking at, maybe your competitors are coming up or whoever, you can then go and try to basically pursue those channels and try to get mentioned there as well. So that's the other thing to consider.
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting, right? Because you're not thinking about like traditionally with SEO, you need to have like specific keywords that you're targeting for, right, in order to get your websites ranked on Google searches and search results versus AI search. It's, a little bit more nuanced, right? You want your brand to be represented, but it doesn't have to be something that's specific as far as, mentioning specific words. You're able to just kind of go out there and authentically promote yourself either on, like you mentioned, Reddit or different platforms out there that have a good reputation, but also I'm assuming a good viewership base as well, or it can't just be a platform where really nobody goes into and nobody looks at as well.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's pretty important now to just kind of think a little bit deeper into this process, right? Because I think AEO is very important. I've done a little bit of SEO, myself, as far as for our business. So when it comes to getting your brand out there, right? With SEO, one of the things that I've noticed is that you want to target for specific search intent, right? You want to look for people who are searching for specific problems or solutions where your business can then come in and help them solve for that specific issue. When it comes to AI search engines, you did mention earlier that when people are going onto these, ChatGPT, Gemini, different tools, they're not putting in, just kind of general search. They're asking very specific questions. So I don't know currently right now if there's any platforms out there that will even, give you I will say like the stats or the data on this, but is there a way for, or is it even something that is viable or useful for you to look for, what people are searching in order to specifically target your content or target where your brand is mentioned or how your brand is mentioned in a way where it only gets, recommended for people that actually want your services and not necessarily just recommended overall across the board. What would you say about that? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Well, there actually are a couple of new players who are in this space that are providing this visibility and monitoring. There's Profound AI, there's Peak AI, Bluefish. Uh, Funny, it's so similar to Redfin, completely different but similar in the real estate industry. Um, and then Tally is a new one. There's a bunch that are actually providing this service, but it's still in very nascent market. It's like it's still getting figured out. The strategies are getting figured out. There's a lot of consultative aspects to like figuring out how to actually make um, how to take action on those insights and how to increase your coverage in these AI engines, um, answer engines. So it's definitely not been figured out yet, but you can, at the very least, you can go and get some visibility on that with some of those tools that are out there.
Yeah, so there are tools out there that are already giving you that information, right? As far as like how many times your brand is mentioned, and then I'm assuming it's also giving you, what people are asking in order for your brand to be mentioned as well.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so, yeah,
Okay.
what typically ends up being the case is you build out, and this is kind of how it's done behind the hood, under the hood or behind the scenes. Like you build out this series of questions that are based on what you think the customer might ask AI, or sometimes there are ways to kind of like get that data through Google or SEMrush and stuff like that, to an extent, and then turn those queries into actual questions. Um, but in any case, you have a big data set of questions, and then what these tools will do is they'll actually query the models and run the searches, and then just measure how often certain brands are mentioned or in what context, um, or other sort of like stats about that.
Wow. Yeah. So that's pretty powerful, I think, because the technology is moving quick, right? I think about a year ago, people weren't even thinking about AEO or getting their websites mentioned on AI, aside from maybe like a few big players or people who are really ahead of the game. And now there's tools out there that can actually help you, provide the data, right? Versus just a few months ago, I was having a hard time finding any information on this. Just on this space. So the reason why I asked that is because, when it comes down to, aside from recommendations and authentic reviews and just engaging with your brand visibility on different platforms like Reddit and Quora, when it comes down to content that you create either natively on your own website that you have, or like you mentioned YouTube or TikTok, that's kind of what I'm getting at is, what are some of the tips and tricks to now tailor your content? Is it going to be a little bit different than creating content for SEO traditionally? And what are some of the differences there that, you've seen so far where maybe we need to tailor our content now, not just for SEO, which people are used to, but how do we create content on our own sites that is then able to be more likely to get recommended on AI search engines?
Yeah, the content's actually pretty similar. There's this great podcast. It's on Lenny's podcast. Lenny Rachitsky. He's kind of a known figure in Silicon Valley for all things growth and marketing and stuff and product. And he hosted this guy who talked about like basically like the very cutting edge of what we know about AEO so far. And one of the things that was mentioned was similarly like putting out content that is very specific, very precise. Having high reputation, high quality content is really, really important. But like it's the same type of tactics in general that that now the search engines like Google are using to rank for SEO. So that part of the playbook is actually pretty similar. It's more like what channels do you focus on? That's what's a little bit more different. Like focusing more on Reddit, focusing more on YouTube, focusing more on and like question answer platforms like Quora. Um, and and then of course like structuring your content a little bit to be more about answers to questions people might be asking rather than just like here's what it is. It's like put yourself in the visitor's shoes and try to get into their head, try to build this theory of mind for them.
Yeah, now that's really cool, man. I think it's really insightful to hear a little bit more about the AI search engines and how to get ranked on there as well. Because when it comes to creating content, we always want to make sure that we're getting the best results and not just kind of getting views for the sake of views, right? And that is kind of what leads me to my next question, and kind of shifting a little bit into the conversion process, right? So there's a lot of websites, a lot of brands out there that probably get a lot of views and a lot of traffic, but they're not necessarily converting them and turning them into leads, right? Are you seeing any specific issues out there with either agents' websites specifically or just business websites out there in general that you would point out and say, okay, these are going to be like the main issues that we're seeing across the board for websites that get a lot of traffic, but they're not necessarily making the conversions and turning them into paying clients and leads?
Yeah. Yeah, the our team has worked a little bit with real estate agents, and there are three key areas of testing focus for real estate, and that we've seen. And it's not like there's common like across the board. This is the common mistake everyone makes, but there are basically three main areas that if you don't nail these areas, like they can be common mistakes if that makes sense. So things to focus on. The first is of course like imagery. You got to have great imagery, and this really just comes down to like how you're positioning the property and making sure that you are aligned with maybe the key object like key buyer and what they could be looking for and prioritizing. The second is similar, which is video and testing that out and trying to figure out, does a um, how to incorporate, walkthrough shots or like drone shots and that kind of stuff, like, using the different techniques in video. And then the third is unique selling proposition. Like what makes this unique? And this is true across every business, every brand, right? Like figuring out what makes this business unique is something that is kind of at the very core of conversion optimization for all the companies that we've worked with so far, at least. And how does that connect with what the buyers are looking for? So, like taking a really hard look at each of these areas is really important. The way to kind of find the best performing imagery and video in particular, and also USPs or unique selling propositions, um, you can actually do this through organic social and organic advertising, or sorry, and paid advertising. So, you're running organic content on your social posts, and like you start to see that like a certain shot works really well, or like a certain type of video, or even for a specific property, maybe like put out a bunch of them and you kind of find that one outperforms the others. That's probably a good signal that you should feature that in the listing on your site. Same thing with unique selling propositions, kind of more on the copy side and messaging side. Um, so there's just a couple like general rules with them that can help to guide this.
Yeah, so like just to recap, right? You want to have good imagery, you want to have videos, and you also want to be able to communicate your unique selling proposition as well. And that's how you get better conversions on your site, on your content than, just somebody out there who just kind of puts out a blank website or a website with just, very boilerplate, which we see across the board with a lot of real estate agents that are out there. Right.
Yeah.
So those are the three main things that you want to focus on if you want to increase your conversions over time.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, now talking a little bit deeper into the conversion side of things and just kind of understanding, how to tailor your messaging and how to tailor your unique selling proposition towards the clients that you want. Are you seeing that maybe there's a lot of websites out there with maybe too much content that could be potentially distracting? Because we do see that, I think, across the board where there are a lot of websites out there where people go on them and there's just maybe too much content, right? Do you think that with less content on a website, it'll actually help increase the conversion rate or conversion percentage? Or do you think that, as long as the content is valuable, you can have as much content as possible and it will still be valuable?
Yeah. No, there are two competing objectives here actually, and this gets to the earlier point on SEO. Um, SEO is this interesting thing where like having more content on the site, having more text can actually significantly help the SEO and the rankings, and also what shows up in the answer engines that we talked about. But that sometimes comes at a cost because AI and the Google crawlers, they can evaluate all the text in a blink of an eye. Humans, on the other hand, cannot and do not. They do not read long things. They read short things. They're able to, like, people are able to, they have a short attention span, right? We have sometimes the patience of a goldfish, um, and so it's really important to kind of like have that balance. For the main points that you want to make, this is why websites are organized like they are, right? You have a main headline. That's like the big key takeaway. And then if that catches someone's interest, you have the subheader, which is like a little bit more information. Maybe you have key benefit bullets. Um, and then you have a CTA and typically, and it's kind of most people can kind of make a judgment call based on that. If they want to learn more, they go deeper and you have, more rich text that's kind of like below the top fold, what we call the fold, which is like the first view of the website before you scroll. Um, and so that's where you can kind of put more of that heavier text content is like beneath that fold. But even then, you kind of want to generally stick to like reason. You don't want unless you're like a blog focused site, you generally don't want to have these like paragraphs on the site. You want to have one or like two sentences max or so on different like little blurbs of text, and then keep things as short and punchy as possible because like friction is something that's really important to keep in mind when trying to convert people.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting, right? To see kind of how it works both ways, where if you want to have your websites get ranked a little bit higher on search results, you want to have as much text or as much valuable text as possible. But that does actually, if it's not value, if it's too much, it does actually decrease your conversion rates, right? Is that kind of on the lines what you're saying as well?
Yeah, yeah. And it's important to have all the important things there on the site, especially in real estate. Like you want to have all the key features of the property that you're selling. And people will go in and maybe you have like expandable things and people can kind of choose their own adventure, kind of like navigate their own journey. But what you don't want to have is like a big overload right at the beginning where people are just not going to read that.
Yeah. And I'm curious now with, moving more in the direction of AEO versus SEO, do you think that websites with maybe less content but more, more direct content as far as telling the audience what it is that they're doing, it's more directly answering the question instead of just trying to hit the key points for, search engine optimization and writing big long articles or having a lot of text on your website, moving from SEO to AEO, do you think that actually, maybe doesn't hinder a website as much if it doesn't have as much text as it used to because it might get picked up by AI search engines, but not by Google.
Well, I think it's still gonna there's like three things here, right? There's AEO, SEO, and CRO, which is conversion rate optimization. The text is going to be helpful for both AEO and the SEO, or the larger amount of text and the higher value text. But it could be a hindrance to CRO. So once someone lands on the website, getting them to actually convert. That's the big point that I want to make here, which is that AEO and SEO in this particular respect are fairly similar in terms of their behaviors and outcomes as it relates to content on the site. More content is better and fine, but for CRO, it's typically substantially worse to have a lot of text.
Got it. So even, with AI search engines, it's still better to have more text if you want your websites to get picked up by AI search engines. Uh, is
Yeah,
that correct?
yeah, yeah. AI search engines will be able to evaluate your site more thoroughly, and then have if there's a higher chance that the website will have addressed something that the user asked about if there's more information and content on it.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. And now, just wanted to maybe get your take a little bit on kind of what you guys are doing with CoFrame, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of agents out there listening to this that, they maybe understand the basic concept of what we're talking about here today, but they really understand that they need to focus a lot on getting their websites not only in front of consumers, but also converting them as well. But as we all know, business owners, entrepreneurs, especially real estate agents, they don't have a lot of time to put towards that. So I'd love to maybe get your take on specifically what you guys are doing with CoFrame, how you guys are helping businesses, helping them increase their not just traffic, but also their conversion rate optimization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the model that we have is kind of uh, a full service model in a sense. So what we do is we come in, we do an analysis of the site experience, and then we will create and run these tests for our customers. Um, and the way that we do that is through the AI technology that we built. So we built a lot of kind of tooling and tech that helps to create these variations of the tests in a way faster velocity or higher velocity, quicker than than we as people could do over the same time period. And um, so with that, what we end up seeing is people are able to test more variations. They're able to find more insights quickly, and ultimately able to compound more conversions and as a result revenue. And so this is a very, very powerful overall technique. Um, and what it enables is kind of what we think is like a new way of doing experimentation, where instead of having like a really strict regimen of like hypothesis and then learning and result and iteration, and that takes a long time. It's more this notion of a constant and continuous optimization process that happens over time. And I mean, the reason that's actually also powerful is your audience is changing all the time. And so it's something that like we don't control that. The audience certainly changes, and so we have built this in a way to where um, if your audience like suddenly I don't know tariffs get announced or like the Fed cuts rates or whatever like that something changes, the market changes, we should be able to adapt very quickly to that because we're able to create these experience variations very quickly and learn from that. So that's kind of a little bit how CoFrame works at a very high level. There's obviously a lot of really cool tech that goes into it, but that's kind of the general TLDR.
Yeah, so that's really cool, right? That you guys are able to adjust on the fly because as we know in real estate, a lot of things change and they can change fairly quickly as well. And for agents, that could mean, changing one or two things on their website or maybe changing their messaging completely so that way they're actually able to capture more leads, but also convert them as well. So that's really cool that you guys do provide the capability in order for these businesses and these agents to actually go ahead and change and test different things on the fly based on market conditions, based on what they're seeing out there in the marketplace as well. So awesome, man. Well, Josh, dude, I appreciate you for being on the show today. I think you shared a ton of value. I mean, I definitely learned a lot from you here today just based on this conversation. So for our audience out there, people who are watching or listening to this that maybe want to reach out or want to learn a little bit more about what you do or want to take a look into CoFrame, what are some of the best places for people to reach out to you, get connected, and explore further?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. I'm on LinkedIn. You can search up Josh Payne CoFrame, and it'll probably come up. And our website is coframe.com. We have a little widget that you can put your website in. It'll ask a couple of questions for like who's your customer and what do they care about and so on, to kind of gather that information, and then that'll kind of put you on our wait list. And yeah, that's a little bit about where to reach me and about the company.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll make sure to leave the links to CoFrame, of course, and as well as your LinkedIn profile in the description, the show notes down below, so that way people are able to find you and get connected easily. But other than that, man, Josh, just want to say thank you again for being on the show. Before I let you go, do you have any last tips or advice or just any last golden nuggets you want to leave with the audience before we let you sign off here today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest thing that I live by quite a bit is just have this philosophy and culture of experimentation. Like, be willing to try out new things. Play with AI, right? you want to, what you want to do is ultimately, because the world is changing so fast, is just make sure that you're out there and you're trying things out and you're in the arena, right? You're like seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work for your own business, and take those swings, right? You're not going to regret it.
Absolutely, man. That's some great advice. Josh, thanks again for being here. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next show. Take care.